Welcome to the Wife Stories YouTube channel. New video every day, and don't forget to subscribe. Here we go.
I haven't slept. Not last night. Not the night before. Not since that morning. I woke up sticky with sweat after we made love in the dark. One of those frantic, wordless sessions that seemed more like we were trying to prove something than share anything. I remember the bedsheets tangling around our legs, her fingernails scratching my back. That brief moment when she closed her eyes and pressed her lips to my shoulder. I thought it was love, or at least the stubborn remnant of it. Maybe that was my mistake. I believed it was genuine. Believed there was still warmth behind her moans, behind her trembling thighs, and the way she mouthed my name as if in prayer. I believed it so much that I missed every single clue staring me right in the face. You'd think after 10 years of marriage, 3 of which I spent reading bedtime stories to a boy I assumed was mine, I'd know my wife inside and out. But there I was, wide awake in the aftermath of our final intimacy, clueless that my entire life was about to detonate. Maybe I should have known. After all, the day before that last time, I sensed a distance in her eyes, an odd hesitancy in her touch. But I chalked it up to stress. My job was demanding, her design projects were overwhelming. And the kid, my boy, had been cranky with a fever. We barely talked. The house felt smaller, as though the walls were pushing in. Then we collapsed into each other, half a routine, half a desperate attempt to reconnect. But the passion was off somehow, rehearsed, like we were both acting out a scene written by someone else. When the alarm rang, she pulled on her robe, scurried to the bathroom. I remember lying there, looking at the ceiling, ignoring my phone's buzz. She left for groceries. Or so she said. I showered and got dressed, but I felt this strange hollowness in my chest. Couldn't name it, so I buried it. I told myself we'd talk later, maybe over dinner. Clear the air. I had no idea that was the last morning I'd let myself believe we were a family. I wish I could turn back to that exact moment and shake myself awake. Because the next day, I was standing in the driveway when the postman stopped by. He handed me a thick envelope. I almost tossed it onto the kitchen counter without looking. Then I saw the return address. A courthouse. I felt a cold jolt in my gut. My name was on the front, spelled out neatly. My heart pounded. No one ever wants an official letter from the courthouse, especially not one so heavy it could serve as a paperweight. Inside, I found the summons for child support, for a kid I'd been raising for 3 years, a boy who carried my last name, only to discover that legally and biologically, he wasn't mine at all. DNA test included, with a cheerful little chart of alleles and markers. My wife's signature in black ink. The petitioner. Alex Griffin. A man I barely knew. But I'd heard the name in passing. An event organizer she'd consulted for some side project. I was dimly aware she'd worked with him. Next thing I knew, the entire world turned sideways. I don't remember speaking. I know she came home. I know she saw me at the kitchen table with those papers laid out in front of me like a grim mosaic. I stared at them so hard my eyes felt dry and gritty. She dropped her keys. They made a small clank on the tile. That sound still resonates in my head when I think about the moment my life collapsed. She stepped closer, lips parted. I think she whispered my name. Tried to explain. I couldn't hear over the roar in my ears. I saw her mouth moving, her body trembling. It felt like I'd fallen through a trapdoor. Everything I believed about love, marriage, fatherhood, it all evaporated. I wanted to speak, but my throat jammed shut. Instead, I got up, walked to the hallway mirror, grabbed a marker from the bowl on the side table, and wrote "Here died a husband" across the glass. The black letters looked jagged, as if they themselves were in shock. My hand shook so hard it was surprising I could write at all. She hovered nearby, one hand pressed to her mouth. I could taste the bitterness of my own fury, but I still didn't speak. There was no point. Words can't fix a lie 3 years deep. There's only the silent quake of betrayal. So I sat at the table again and pushed the court papers toward her. She tried to talk, but the sound that came out was barely above a whimper. I stared at her, letting the moment drag out, feeding on her discomfort like it was the only thing keeping me conscious. My entire mind screamed, "You did this. You let me believe he was mine. Now you want me to listen." I stood and left. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't some raging meltdown with dishes flying or doors slamming. I just felt an icy clarity. I'm done. This farce of a marriage, our routines, the illusions, I was done. She could have it all. The house, the furniture, the overstuffed couch we picked out together. All of it. I walked out with my keys, my wallet, and a bag. Drove to a motel on the outskirts of town, near the train tracks. I remember lying on the musty bed, staring at the water-stained ceiling, trying to parse how my life had gone so wrong. That was days ago. Maybe a week. Time blurs when you can't sleep. My boss tried to call, voicemails piling up. I ignored them. Only ventured out to buy cheap dinners or new clothes from the discount store, because apparently I'd left my entire wardrobe behind. I guess I didn't care. My reflection in the motel mirror was all I needed to see. A man undone, with hollow cheeks and eyes like dusty lamps. Eventually, though, I wanted more. Answers, maybe. Or confrontation. I was angry, sure, but underneath that fury was something rancid, like I was rotting from the inside. So I started driving by the house, parked across the street in whatever rental or borrowed car I could manage. Because part of me was too paranoid to show up in my own sit-in. Like she'd see me, come out, talk me down. Or maybe I wanted her to see me. I can't tell anymore. Night after night, I'd watch her silhouette pass behind the curtains. She always turned off the main light in the living room, but left the lamp on by the window, probably hoping I'd see it like a beacon. The boy would cry sometimes. I could see her carrying him, pacing the hallway. My chest ached. For 3 years, I'd told that kid I was his father. We'd had jokes, routines, made silly faces at each other. Now it was all smoke. My paternal love pinned on a stranger's child. I keep thinking of that last time we made love. I can't purge the memory of her nails scraping my skin or the faint groan in her throat. It's like a replay of a scene from a movie that never ends. I guess you'd call that a flashback. Except it's not just an image. It's a full-body punch of betrayal. Her warmth was never really mine. Or it was stolen from me the moment she let someone else into our bed. Maybe not physically the same bed, but the bed of our marriage. She took the vows we made and twisted them into something rotten. Then she had me raise a child who shares none of my blood. If there's a name for that kind of cruelty, I don't know it. But I do know this. I can't stand the thought of her breath on my skin ever again. Still, I had questions, so on the 3rd or 4th day, I can't recall which, I walked up to the door. Her SUV was in the driveway, the kid's car seat inside. My key slid into the lock smoothly, too smoothly, a reminder that in some legal sense, I still belong here. I found her in the kitchen, kneeling by the dishwasher, rummaging for a fresh trash bag. She startled when she saw me, and for a second, I swear she smiled as if I'd come home. Then her face crumpled into guilt. She stayed on her knees, eyes wide. I waited, leaning against the wall. The tension felt like static electricity. She looked thinner, shadows under her eyes. I guess betrayal weighs heavy on the soul, or maybe she'd had trouble sleeping too. Good, at least that made 2 of us. When she finally stood, there was a tremor in her voice. You came back. We should talk." I eyed the kitchen counters, the faucet dripping, the overhead lights casting a harsh glare. "Talk? Sure," I said quietly. "But first, I have a question. Where does he keep his toothbrush?" She blinked, like she didn't understand. "Whose toothbrush?" I cocked my head. "Your boyfriend. Alex, the father of your child. Does he keep a toothbrush here? A spare shirt, maybe? Or a hidden stash of cologne? I'm just curious." Her mouth opened, but no words came out. She shook her head. He's not staying here." Right. Because you'd never insult me like that. I let out a chuckle. It came out more like a bark. That was my black humor creeping up, the only shield I had. So that's it. You just had a quick fling, got pregnant, and decided to pass off the kid as mine because it was easier. She swallowed hard. It wasn't easy. I was scared. And you were so happy about starting a family. I didn't know how. I cut her off. Actually, I'd like to do this more systematically, if you don't mind. I dropped a notebook on the counter, the kind I used at work for memos. Let's pretend you're a suspect, and I'm the detective. Because that's how it feels, you know. I've got to interrogate you about my own life. Her eyes glistened. Please, don't do this. I'm so sorry. I never wanted to hurt you. I flipped open the notebook. Question 1. When did the affair start? Month and year, if you can remember. She took a step back. It wasn't, God. It wasn't a planned affair. It happened once. We'd been arguing. You were so distant. I was stressed. I wrote something in the notebook, a flourish of the pen. So you're saying you slept with him once. Next question. Did you know I wasn't the father before you told me you were pregnant? She pressed her palms to her temples. I suspected. But I was hoping, praying that maybe it was yours. Then I had the baby, and the doctor mentioned blood-type complications. I started to worry, but I didn't have proof. My hand was shaking. So the entire time, you let me bond with him. You let me be daddy. Did you ever think you'd come clean? Or was this going to be your secret until the end of time? She stared at the floor. I almost told you a dozen times. But I kept seeing how much you loved him, how good you were to both of us. I was a coward. I didn't want to lose you. I gave a short, humorless laugh. I guess you lost me anyway. A real plot twist, huh? I slammed the notebook shut. You know, I pictured this moment differently. I thought maybe I'd yell, throw plates, but it all feels so empty, like we've reached the credits of a really bad movie. Tears streaked down her cheeks. For a second, I thought about wiping them away, the way I used to, but the memory of that envelope, of those black letters scrawled in DNA results, held me back. Instead, I stuffed the notebook under my arm. She whispered, I'll do anything. We can go to counseling. We can fix this. We can. I shook my head. You think a few therapy sessions will change the fact that you lied to me about fathering a child? For 3 years, my voice quivered. I had to clench my fists to keep from trembling. Sorry. No. You want to fix it, but you can't undo what's done. She tried to approach, her hands outstretched. Please, I beg you. Let's talk about what happens with our son. I barked out a harsh laugh. Our son. Don't you dare. He's not mine, remember? You made sure of that when you let Griffin knock you up. She flinched, tears spilling freely. He doesn't even see it that way. He wants child support because his business is in trouble. He threatened to blackmail me. I panicked. A wave of disgust swept through me. I realized, ironically, that I felt sorry for her. I shouldn't. But I did, because there's something horrifying about a cornered woman, trying so hard to keep her illusions intact that she's willing to watch them burn anyway. I turned and left without another word. Outside, the afternoon sun glared bright. I squinted, a rancid taste in my mouth. I felt hollow, exhausted. On the drive back to the motel, I rolled down the window, letting cold air whip across my face. Then I started laughing. A low, humorless chuckle that climbed higher until it turned almost hysterical. I caught a glimpse of myself in the rearview mirror, eyes wild, face drawn, mouth twisted into something that might pass for a grin in a nightmare. That was the moment I realized I was alone, truly alone, and surprisingly, it felt almost good, in a sick way, like I'd found the bottom of the pit, couldn't fall any further. But there was still one piece of the puzzle. Alex Griffin, the wedding organizer, the one who put in the official paternity claim. The man who demanded I pay child support for a kid he fathered. That was a special flavor of twisted. I pictured him in a slick suit, a big grin, talking about wedding centerpieces and color palettes. Did he laugh behind my back when I carried my wife over the threshold after our vow renewal? She told me to invite him, claiming he'd helped plan the design. I never suspected a thing. Now I feel like an idiot. I started driving into town at odd hours, searching for him. I learned from a neighbor that he had an event planning office in a narrow brick building downtown. One evening, I staked it out. The place was well lit, with a front window that displayed floral arrangements and pictures of happy couples. My stomach churned. After an hour, the door opened. A short guy in a fashionable peacoat stepped out, checking his phone. Even from a distance, I sensed his smugness. That had to be him. I followed in my car. Not sure what I intended, but the anger demanded some sort of confrontation. The city lights slid across the windshield, making my eyes burn. He pulled up to a newer apartment complex, where he parked and went inside. I killed my engine and sat there, a creeping sense of emptiness settling in again. I tried to conjure the righteous fury I'd had a moment ago, but it receded, leaving a dull ache. What would I say to him? Stay away from my wife. She's not really mine anymore. Stay away from my child. He is the child's father, biologically. So I let the steering wheel slip through my fingers, started the car, and drove off, feeling like a fool. Maybe my revenge, if any, would come in a different form. Or maybe there's no revenge to be had. Back at the motel, I sat on the edge of the bed, thinking. I imagined standing face to face with him, asking, how does it feel to ruin a man's marriage? To have your name on a child you never bothered to raise? But then I realized the darkest truth. It wasn't about him. It was about her. She was the one who said yes. She was the one who decided to keep me in the dark. My fight wasn't with him. He was just the instigator, sure, but she was my wife. She tore my heart out and set it on a platter. Days bowled together. I lost track of everything. Twice, I forgot to eat. The electric tension in my chest wouldn't let me rest. I'd sleep in fits and starts, only to wake up shaking, replaying everything. That final time we had sex came back to me in nauseating detail. Was it guilt in her eyes, or just lust for another man? The images blurred. I'd stare at the motel's water-stained ceiling and imagine all sorts of scenarios of how it happened. Did she meet him at a wedding expo, laugh at his jokes? Did they slip away after hours, adrenaline spiking? Did she let him hold her the way she let me hold her? My stomach lurched. I'd go to the sink and splash water on my face, cursing under my breath. That's what betrayal does. It plants nightmares you can't tear out. Eventually, something inside me hardened. I had a plan. Maybe not a moral one, but a plan. I needed to see them both, in the same room. Because part of me still felt like this was some twisted dream. So I engineered it. I used the cheap motel landline, because my phone was blowing up with endless calls, and dialed her number. My voice was tight as I asked her to meet me at a diner downtown, someplace public. She sounded hesitant but agreed. Then I found Alex's business number online, left him a curt message explaining there was a discussion about finances that needed to happen. I didn't think he'd show, but apparently money was enough motivation. The date was set. A Tuesday evening, just before the dinner rush. I arrived early. Picked a booth at the back, near the bathrooms. The place was nothing special. Linoleum floors, flickering neon sign, a juke in the corner playing half-dead country tunes. I sat with my back to the window, so I could see both the door and them. A waitress came by, offered coffee. I nodded. My hands were clammy around the mug. The coffee tasted like burnt rubber. Fitting. She walked in first, wearing a long coat, hair down, looking pale. She spotted me, gave a little nod, slid into the booth across from me, leaving space for a third. The tension was suffocating. We didn't speak. It was like we were two strangers forced to share a bench. I tried not to notice her trembling hands. Then the door opened again, and there he was. Alex Griffin. Slightly shorter than me, neat hair, crisp jacket. He had that confident posture, like he owned the place just by stepping inside. He scanned the diner, locked eyes with me, then with her. A flicker of anxiety crossed his face, quickly replaced by a grin that felt forced. He strolled over, nodding politely, and slid in next to her. I stared at him, letting the silence draw out. He cleared his throat. "So, you asked me here to talk about the child support case." I took another sip of coffee, letting the acid bitterness coat my tongue. Then I spoke quietly. "No. I asked you here because I want to see the man who claims to be my kid's father, who also wants me to pay for it. I find that interesting." She shifted uneasily. "Alex, maybe it was a mistake." I shot her a warning glance, then turned to him. "I got your letter. Your DNA test. Your demands. I'm sure you're well within your legal rights. The mother, my wife, signed off on it. So you want me to foot the bill for your child. Now, explain to me how that works." He put on a smarmy smile. "Look, man, I'm not trying to cause trouble. Fact is, she never told me about the kid until recently. I found out, asked for a test. Then I realized raising a child is expensive. And you've been in the father role for 3 years. We can come to an agreement that benefits everyone." A wave of anger rose in my throat, but I forced it down. I pressed my palms flat on the table. "Benefits everyone," I repeated. "Except me, presumably, since I'll be paying for a child that isn't mine." Alex shrugged. "Legally, if you're on the birth certificate, you're on the hook. That's the law in this state. I can't change that. And hey, if we want to co-parent or something." "Co-parent," I hissed. A grim laugh bubbled up. "Are you out of your mind? You think I'd want anything to do with you, or a child you fathered behind my back? You two can ride off into the sunset together. I'm done being the patsy." She placed a trembling hand on Alex's arm. "This is exactly why I didn't want us all in one room. You're both acting. Don't," I warned, quietly. "Don't lump me in with him. And you're not an innocent bystander here. You created this circus." Her eyes brimmed with tears. "I swear, I never thought it would come to this. Alex told me he wouldn't push for money. Then everything got complicated with his business. Yeah, well," Alex cut in. "My overhead soared, and your husband here is still legally responsible." Then he turned to me, eyes narrowing. "Look, you're upset. I get it. But reality is reality. The court sees you as the father. The mother always insisted you were. So," I slammed a hand on the table, making the salt and pepper shakers rattle. People at nearby tables glanced over. My voice came out lower than I expected. "You do not get to talk to me about reality. You're an event organizer, for Christ's sake. You spin illusions for a living. Flowers, candles, big showy parties. Then you go behind your clients' backs and knock up their wives. If anything's illusory, it's you." He bristled. "Hey, that's enough. I never forced her to do anything. She's a grown woman. She chose me that night." A savage ache tore through my chest. "You're right. She did. And because of that, she's your responsibility now. You got that? You and her can figure out how to feed that kid, because this well is dry." He started to protest, but I grabbed the leftover coffee in my mug and poured it onto the floor, making a dark puddle. "That's me," I said, voice shaky with anger, pouring out the last drop of everything I owe. "You want more? File your papers. We'll see what a judge says." My wife, my ex-wife, basically covered her face with both hands, shoulders trembling. Alex looked like he couldn't decide if he should threaten me or comfort her. I stood up, tossed a few bills on the table for the coffee. Then I leaned in close, speaking quietly enough that only they could hear. "You know what the worst part is?" I said, my breath uneven. It's not the betrayal, not the sex. It's that she was ready to let me go on believing a lie. That's real cruelty. The opposite of love isn't hate, it's indifference. She was willing to be indifferent to the damage. She let me raise a child who has no part of me in him, and never once confessed. If that's not the definition of heartbreak, I don't know what is. She was sobbing now, but softly, stifling the noise in her hands. Alex pressed his lips together, looking torn between guilt and frustration. I straightened, running a hand over my unshaven jaw. I felt an emptiness where my heart used to be. And oddly enough, that emptiness gave me clarity. "You've both lost me," I said. "Do whatever you want with your illusions. I'm finished." With that, I turned and left the diner, ignoring the stares from the other patrons. Outside, the sky had turned a bruised purple, the city lights flickering on. I took a breath of the cold air, feeling it sting my lungs, and realized I wasn't trembling anymore. I walked to my car like a man stepping off a battlefield. Maybe my clothes were torn, maybe my spirit was battered, but I'd survived. And in a twisted way, that was enough. I thought it would end there, but of course, it didn't. That night, I found myself doing the same routine, parking my car near the house I once called home, across the street. A different vantage point, a different hour. She was in there, tucking the boy into bed. I could see the soft glow of a lamp in what used to be my bedroom. I caught a silhouette of her pacing back and forth, phone in hand. She probably tried calling me. I didn't check. Instead, I let the engine idle, my mind drifting into that strange, black-humored place. The place where I can ironically say, "At least I don't have to stay up changing diapers anymore." Then I wondered if that was even funny or just sad. Because I loved that boy, or who I thought he was. I taught him to hold a spoon, to say please and thank you, to hold the ring-bearer's cushion at our 10th anniversary vow renewal. Now I'd lost that part of my life, and all I had left was bitterness, or so I told myself. Night after night, I repeated this vigil. Sometimes I'd check into a different motel on the same road, switching rooms so the neighbors wouldn't recognize me. It became a sick game, seeing how close I could get without being seen. Watching the curtains open and close. She'd step onto the porch, rub her arms against the chill, glance toward the street. I never approached. She kept waiting, hoping, maybe, that I'd come back inside. But each day ended the same way, me starting the car and driving away. Every day was my final, and in every final, she lost. Once, I stepped out of the car and considered walking up to the house, telling her I forgave her, or that I hated her, or something, anything. But I only managed a few steps. Then I caught a glimpse of the reflection in the dark window. A man who didn't recognize himself anymore. So I turned around, quietly got back into the driver's seat, and laughed. A dark, joyless laugh that said, "This is who I am now. The man who watches from outside. The man who gave up." In a weird twist, I started to think I might actually let them take me to court. Let the judge see the raw damage, maybe let him declare that I owe nothing. Or maybe he'd side with the law, brand me legally responsible. I was numb enough not to care, because the ultimate punishment or release would come from my own acceptance that I'd been living a lie. The official documents were just a footnote. Eventually, the illusions of hope died too. She must have realized I wasn't returning. One night, I saw her come out to the mailbox in her robe, the streetlight outlining her thin frame. She opened it, rummaged through the letters, then paused, staring out toward the shadows where I sat. I slouched lower, out of her line of sight. She lingered a moment, then closed the mailbox, walking back inside with her head down. Something about the slope of her shoulders told me she truly understood. I wasn't coming home. That was the moment I expected heartbreak to crush me. Instead, I felt relief. Because for the first time since I read that damned envelope, I believed I could survive on the other side of betrayal. In that instant, the final shred of feeling I had for her, love, pity, regret, slipped away like a wisp of smoke. In its place was a cold clarity. She was out of my heart, out of my memory, except for the scars. And the only place her name remained was that mirror in the hallway, the one with "Here died a husband" scrawled across it in black marker. If she wanted to wipe it away, she could. If she left it as some morbid reminder, that was her choice. For me, the man she once called husband was already a ghost. In the days that followed, I made calls to a lawyer, started the process of disclaiming paternity. There are ways, if you have the stomach for it. Maybe it'd be complicated, maybe not. All I knew was that if Alex Griffin wanted to father a child, he'd damn well do it on his own dime. And she, well, she'd find a way to survive. Maybe she and Alex would combine forces to keep the child fed and clothed, or maybe they'd tear each other apart in the process. Not my concern anymore. That's the best part of finality. Eventually, you run out of tears and realize you're free. I'm still in a motel. Might be the same chain, might be a different one. It doesn't matter. All these cheap rooms smell like sour detergent and stale cigarettes. But something strange happened this morning. I looked at my reflection in the grimy bathroom mirror and didn't cringe. The hollows beneath my eyes were still there, but the emptiness felt less suffocating. I'm not sure where I go from here. Maybe I'll pack my car and drive south, see if I can get a fresh start. Maybe I'll return to my job, attempt to salvage the career I left hanging. I don't know. But I do know I won't be knocking on that door again. That part of my life is done. The curtain closed. There's a twisted kind of peace in that. She can keep the house, keep the illusions, keep everything except me. Because the me who played husband, father, provider, he died the moment I read those court papers. And if she ever wonders if I might reappear, well, she can step outside at dusk, squint into the headlights of passing cars, and hope. But that hope will die each time. Like I said, every date is my final now. And in each final, she loses. I expected to feel triumph, or at least satisfaction at this realization. But all I feel is the same cold emptiness, laced with a flicker of black humor. Isn't it hilarious? She found a new father for her child, but now she's lost the man who truly would have loved her forever. Maybe that's justice, or maybe it's just life's grim joke. Either way, I'm done. When the sun rises tomorrow, I'm checking out of this motel, one last time. As for sleep, maybe it'll come back. Maybe not. But I'm not scared of the nightmares anymore. Because the worst one already happened in broad daylight, delivered in a courthouse envelope. After something like that, what's left to fear? I'll find my way. We always do, eventually. And if a memory of that final love-making resurfaces, if I see her eyes flutter shut and feel her nails rake my skin, I'll just remember the punchline. That wasn't love. It was a desperate act of someone who knew she was cornered. Or maybe it was me, trying to hold on to a lie. Either way, it's over. And for the first time in a long time, I can breathe.